Greetings viewers, I have a confession to make. I was wrong, or at least I probably will be proven to be. We haven't yet seen the results of the US presidential elections, but it does appear that Barack Obama will be the next head of the US division of the globalist criminal syndicate. In my previous video on this topic, which is called Why Barrack for Obama, I stand by most of what I said in that video, but one of the lines I pulled was that I didn't think he had much chance of getting in because he's not a blue blood. Well, actually, as it turns out, he's a distant cousin of Dick Cheney on his mother's side. But that's not the sole determining factor. However, it has to be said that Hillary Clinton was still an option at that stage, but that was before this happened.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
Hillary Clinton made a dramatic entrance into war-torn Bosnia today as she piloted her jumbo jet to a safe landing. Unfortunately for Mrs. Clinton, some of the hardest fighting the human race has ever seen was currently raging, with routine nuclear attacks on both sides. Top generals agree there's no place more dangerous and snipery than Bosnia right now. Our noble and brave First Lady took time away from dodging attacks to shake hands and smile, and yes, even show off a little marksmanship on a terrorist hiding under a tank. One of the most dramatic moments came as the H-bomb, a nickname given to her on this trip, was hugging a young girl. Sniper fire struck two men standing nearby, leaving them shaken and impressed by Mrs. Clinton's calm composure under fire.
That's right. Hillary committed political suicide. She told a blatantly absurd lie, which was obviously going to be exposed, and so scratch Clinton and bring forward Obama. I mean, and that might be expected, you know, within the Democrats. But what's very interesting is what the so-called right-wing conservatives, you know, Obama's supposed adversaries, have been saying about him. You know, there's been all sorts of rumours that he's smoked crack, that he's a homosexual, that he's a closet Muslim, that he's a communist. You know, a communist, homosexual, crack-smoking Muslim. I mean, you know, all these contradictory allegations, and you know, I don't know whether any of them are true. I haven't really looked into it. These contradictory allegations. Yeah, has it occurred to anyone to think that probably Obama's own people put them out there, so that, you know, all of these, quite frankly, politically naive conservatives would lap it up and run with it and make fools of themselves, because that seems to have been what's happened. That, you know, they've also highlighted various unsavoury associations, you know, Obama with, you know, like the Nation of Islam, Al Sharpton, yeah, and various other unsavoury creatures, and also, and this is interesting, I'll go into this a bit later, the Weathermen, or also known as the Weather Underground. This is all interesting, but these little groups, I mean, the Nation of Islam, as unsavoury as they are, do not have any major political power. Either does Al Sharpton, and either does the Weather Underground. So, you know, why are they ignoring the real power behind Barack Obama? Now, the real power behind Barack Obama is ultimately the US establishment, or ultimately the globalist establishment, really. But in particular, I'll just focus in this video on someone I mentioned in my last video, Zbigniew Brzezinski. This is Zbigniew Brzezinski, one of the founders of the Trilateral Commission on behalf of David Rockefeller in the early 70s. Apparently David Rockefeller was very impressed with his book, The Technotronic Era, which was sort of a futuristic totalitarian promotion document. National Security Advisor in the Carter administration. He played a role in the Reagan administration. Mentor to Zalmay Khalilzad, who's someone I'll talk about in another video. The list goes on. Oh yeah, and let's not forget, one of his key achievements, quote unquote, was being one of the key architects of the global Mujahideen. Here's pictures of him with the Mujahideen in the late, apparently near the Pakistan-Afghani border in the late 70s. And apparently this man with him, according to some, is none other than Osama bin Laden. Now, I have no way of knowing whether that's true or not, but well, all I can say is it wouldn't surprise me. Point is, he most certainly set up the Mujahideen, and it is no secret that Osama bin Laden was on the CIA payroll throughout the 1980s. This man is far more powerful than the Weather Underground, Nation of Islam, or any of these other pathetic little groups ever could hope to be. Right? So it's high time that people started waking up to these sort of characters and realising that there's people like that behind the scenes pulling the strings, not the Nation of Islam or any of these little groups. Most of Obama's ostensible opponents would likely describe themselves as being right-wing conservatives and part of the legacy of Ronald Reagan, and would also likely describe themselves as being pro-Israel. In fact, many of the pro-Israel blogs are making a big point of that about Obama, and that Obama is bad for Israel. Well, I would challenge anyone to give an example of a US president, particularly since the 1970s, who hasn't attacked Israel. And I would urge all Americans who consider themselves pro-Israel to read an online book, which I'll provide a link to in the description column. Don't forget to press more info. Called Is the US an Ally of Israel? A Chronological Look at the Evidence. And as for this legacy of Ronald Reagan, I seriously doubt that most Reagan fans, or whatever you want to call them, really even know anything about the guy. I mean, I could talk about the CIA destabilisation of Nicaragua and support for the Contra terrorists throughout the 1980s. But only bleeding heart liberals talk about that. I could also talk about Reagan's involvement with Operation Cable Splicer in the late 60s, but hey, only conspiracy theorists talk about that, hey. So, for all you people who call yourselves right-wing conservatives, think about this. What is the legacy of Ronald Reagan? Well, let's see, he continued and extended Jimmy Carter's pro-Afghan Mujahideen project in Afghanistan. There was the massive, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars of American high-tech arms sent to Iran. It's the Ayatollah Khomeini's Iran throughout the 1980s. You remember the Iran-Contra scandal? Then there's just look in the 1980s section of Is the US an Ally of Israel? Just some of it. In 1982, the US saved the PLO from certain defeat at the hands of the Israeli Defense Force. And then in 1985, and a few people seem to remember this, Reagan went out of his way, to lay a wreath at the Berg Memorial in Germany, where the SS soldiers were buried, and described the SS soldiers as victims just as surely as the victims in the concentration camps. He made Holocaust denial sort of legit, didn't he? And I'll let you read it. There's plenty of documentation to prove what I'm saying. There was also, of course, the arming to the teeth of Saudi Arabia, which started under Jimmy Carter, but Reagan extended it, something to the tune of $200 billion of high-tech US weapons to Saudi Arabia, so we're told, one of the key sponsors of global Islamist terrorism. If you don't even know these basic facts about one of your heroes and leaders, then what hope have you got against, Barack Obama and those behind him? No wonder the campaigning has failed. So, why would the establishment want to put Barack Obama in power? Well, that's a tricky one. There's numerous reasons. I mean, obviously the guy's got charisma and so on and so forth. There's also what I think is happening particularly with the financial meltdown, the very engineered financial meltdown, I might add, which is currently occurring. It will really reach a peak during Obama's presidency. So what better way to kind of whitewash it in a way than to have an African American being in power when everything, goes to the shit, basically. And this is where I get back to the Weather Underground, which I mentioned before. There's a link in the description column to an article by Jared Israel, who actually knew some of them personally, as political enemies. And these people were not leftists. They were agent provocateurs. and Jared Israel provides a very compelling case for that. And now they're being regurgitated. Now, with the trials and tribulations, which I think are going to be global, and certainly which are going to occur in America, that's going to lead to a mass case of very disgruntled people. So what better way to manage these disgruntled people than to put out various pseudo-leftist, pseudo-revolutionary groups which claim to speak for the poor and the working class and so on and so forth, but who are in fact a bunch of frauds and infiltrators. Anyway, that's my piece for now. I'll probably have more to say about Obama because there really is actually quite a lot to say. You know, I don't really generally pay much attention to US presidential elections, but this one's different. So, good luck, and I'll catch you next time.